In a fog-choked London office, a meticulous bookkeeper lies dead, the door locked, a ledger page vanished. Was it the scheming partner, hiding his embezzlement, the fiery heiress, wronged by missing funds, or the timid clerk, trembling with secrets? Hercule Poirot unravels a web of deceit where a deadly gas and a cunning trick conceal a killer's greed. In the phantom ledger, no secret escapes the little gray cells. Chapter 1. The locked room. The November fog draped London in a shroud of gray, muffling the clatter of hansoms and the cries of newsboys. In a narrow street off Chancery Lane, Hercule Poirot ascended the creaking stairs to the offices of Messrs. Thorne and Blackwood, accountants of modest renown. His polished boots clicked precisely on the worn wood, and he adjusted his pince-nez with a delicate flick, his mustache bristling with anticipation. Inspector Japp had summoned him with urgency, and Poirot, ever intrigued by the unusual, had come at once. The office door, heavy oak with a frosted glass panel, stood ajar, revealing a scene of quiet disarray. The room was small, its walls lined with shelves groaning under ledgers bound in cracked leather. A single desk, piled with papers, dominated the space, its inkstand overturned, a black stain seeping into the blotter. Beneath the desk, sprawled in an undignified heap, lay Mr. Ernest Thorne, senior bookkeeper. His eyes, wide and unseeing, stared at the ceiling, his face frozen in a rictus of shock, as if death had caught him mid-thought. A faint, acrid scent hung in the air, barely perceptible beneath the musty odor of old paper. Inspector Japp, his bowler hat pushed back on his head, stood by the window, his expression a blend of exasperation and intrigue. "Morning, Poirot," he said, his voice gruff but warm. "Got a right queer one here. Ernest Thorne, dead as a doornail, door locked from the inside, window latched tight. No sign of a struggle, but—" He gestured to the desk, where a large ledger lay open, its pages pristine save for a jagged tear where one had been ripped out. "That missing page bothers me. Doesn't sit right." Poirot's green eyes gleamed as he surveyed the scene, his head tilted like a bird considering a puzzle. "A heart attack, you think, mon ami?" he asked, his voice soft, almost teasing. "Or does the missing page suggest something more deliberate?" Japp snorted. "Heart attack's what the doctor leans toward, but I'm not so sure. Thorne was fit enough, only 50, no history of ailments. And that page? Why's it gone? Someone's been in here. Poirot, locked room or not?" Poirot stepped forward, his movements precise, almost balletic. He knelt beside the body, noting the bookkeeper's clenched hand, the faint, bluish tinge to his lips. "Non, non," he murmured, almost to himself. "This is no natural death. The face, the hands, they speak of something swift, something insidious." He rose, brushing his trousers with a fastidious hand, and turned to the desk. The ledger, its entries meticulous in Thorne's spidery hand, told of accounts managed with care. The missing page, Poirot deduced, was from the section labeled Henshaw Estate. He inhaled deeply, his nostrils flaring. "This odor, Inspector, what do you make of it?" Japp frowned, sniffing the air. "Ink, maybe? Dust? These old offices are full of smells." Poirot shook his head, a small smile playing beneath his mustache. "Non, it is something else. A chemical, perhaps, faint but present. It is a clue, mon ami, and Hercule Poirot does not ignore clues." Japp gestured to the door, its lock gleaming dully. "Checked it myself. Locked tight, key still in the inside. Windows latched, no sign of tampering. If someone did him in, how'd they get out?" Poirot's gaze swept the room, lingering on the ventilation grate above the desk, a small brass square half hidden by a shelf. He said nothing but filed the detail away in the orderly chambers of his mind. Captain Hastings, who had arrived moments earlier, hovered near the door, his honest face creased with concern. "Ghastly business, Poirot," he said. "A locked room, a dead man, and a missing page. It's like something out of a novel." Poirot chuckled softly. "Life, Hastings, is often more fantastical than fiction. But rest assured, the little gray cells will unravel this tangle. A murder has been committed, and the ledger is the heart of it." He turned to Japp. "Who had access to this office, Inspector? Who might wish to silence Monsieur Thorne and steal his page?" Japp rubbed his chin. "Three, mainly. Cedric Blackwood, his partner, was at his club, or so he says. Miss Clara Henshaw, a client, was here this morning about her accounts, and Timothy Wells, the clerk, was in and out all day. We'll question them, but it's the how that's got me stumped." Poirot nodded, his fingers tracing the edge of the desk. "The how, the why, the who, these are the questions. And Hercule Poirot will find the answers. Let us begin, Inspector, with the order and the method." As he spoke, his eyes flicked once more to the grate, and a spark of certainty kindled within him. The game, as he often said, was afoot. Chapter 2. The Three Suspects. The fog had thickened outside the offices of Messrs. Thorne and Blackwood, casting a pall over Chancery Lane that seemed to seep into the very walls of the cramped, ledger-lined room where Hercule Poirot stood. The body of Ernest Thorne had been removed, but the air still carried the faint, acrid tang that Poirot's keen senses had noted. A clue, he was certain, that would prove pivotal. Inspector Japp, his notebook open, was pacing, his boots scuffing the worn floorboards. Captain Hastings, ever the loyal companion, stood by the window, his face a mixture of curiosity and unease as he watched Poirot's meticulous inspection of the scene. "Three suspects, Poirot," Japp said, flipping a page in his notebook. "Cedric Blackwood, the partner, Miss Clara Henshaw, the client, and young Timothy Wells, the clerk. Each had access to this office. Each could have a reason. But I'll be dashed if I can see how anyone got in or out with that door locked and the window latched." Poirot, adjusting his immaculate tie, gave a small nod. "The locked room, mon ami, is but a distraction. The mind of the murderer is where we must look. Motive, opportunity, character, these will guide us. Let us meet these three and observe." His green eyes gleamed with that peculiar intensity that Hastings knew signaled the awakening of the little gray cells. Japp led the way to a small anteroom where the suspects waited, separated to prevent collusion. The atmosphere was heavy with tension, the kind that follows sudden death, when every glance carries suspicion and every word is weighed. Poirot, with his usual air of fastidious calm, entered first, followed by Hastings, who clutched his hat as if it might anchor him in the face of such a grim affair. Cedric Blackwood. The first to be interviewed was Mr. Cedric Blackwood, the surviving partner of the firm. He sat in a high-backed chair, his florid cheeks flushed an unhealthy shade of crimson, his hands fidgeting with a silver cigarette case that gleamed under the dim gaslight. Blackwood was a man in his late 40s, broad-shouldered but with a softness about him that suggested indulgence. His suit, though well-tailored, was slightly rumpled, and his tie was askew, as if he had dressed in haste. His eyes, small and darting, met Poirot's only briefly before flitting away. "Monsieur Blackwood," Poirot began, his voice smooth as velvet, "you were not in the office when Monsieur Thorne met his unfortunate end. Where precisely were you?" Blackwood cleared his throat, the sound loud in the quiet room. "At my club, the Athenaeum, in Pall Mall. I left here around 10 this morning. Business matters, you know, can be tedious. I needed a change of air." His fingers tapped the cigarette case, a nervous rhythm. Poirot tilted his head, his mustache twitching slightly. "A change of air, monsieur? In November, with the fog so thick one can scarcely see one's hand? Most curious. And what time did you return?" Blackwood hesitated, his flush deepening. I didn't return until after lunch, perhaps 2 o'clock. I heard the news when I arrived. Shocking. Absolutely shocking." His voice carried a rehearsed note of dismay, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of something else. Fear, perhaps, or calculation. Hastings, standing by the door, scribbled in his notebook, though he found Blackwood's manner more theatrical than sincere. Poirot, however, leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "You and Monsieur Thorne were partners for how long?" 10 years, Blackwood replied, his tone steadier now. "We built this firm from nothing. Ernest was the numbers man, meticulous to a fault. I handled the clients, the charm, you might say." He forced a smile, but it faltered under Poirot's scrutiny. "And were there disagreements, perhaps? A man so meticulous as Monsieur Thorne might notice irregularities." Poirot's question was gentle, almost casual, but it landed like a dart. Blackwood's hand stilled on the cigarette case. "Irregularities? No, nothing of the sort." We trusted each other implicitly, but his voice cracked, and he quickly lit a cigarette, exhaling a cloud of smoke that did little to mask his unease. Poirot made a small, satisfied sound, like a cat settling by a fire. "Merci, Monsieur Blackwood. For now, that is all. But do not leave London, s'il vous plaît." As Blackwood left, Hastings whispered, "Shifty sort, isn't he? That business about the club, do you believe him?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Believe, Hastings?" "I observe. Monsieur Blackwood's hands betray his nerves, and his alibi is as flimsy as this fog. We shall verify it. Naturellement, Clara Henshaw." The second suspect, Miss Clara Henshaw, entered with the air of a woman accustomed to command. She was perhaps 40, though her sharp features and erect posture made her age difficult to pinpoint. Her dress, a deep burgundy silk, was elegant but not ostentatious, and her dark hair was swept into a severe chignon. Her eyes, a piercing gray, met Poirot's without flinching, and her lips were set in a line that suggested neither grief nor fear, but rather impatience. "Miss Henshaw," Poirot began, bowing slightly, "you visited Monsieur Thorne this morning, I understand. May I inquire as to the purpose?" Her voice was crisp, each word enunciated with precision. "My accounts, Monsieur Poirot. I am a woman of considerable means, and Thorne managed the finances of my estate. I came to discuss discrepancies I had noticed, small sums, but enough to raise questions." She folded her hands in her lap, her gloves pristine, her composure unshaken. Poirot's eyebrows rose slightly. "Discrepancies? Most interesting. And what did Monsieur Thorne say to these concerns?" "He was evasive," she replied, a hint of disdain in her tone. "He promised to review the ledger, but I found his manner unsatisfactory. I left at 10:30, and he was very much alive." Her gaze was steady, almost challenging. Hastings, watching closely, noted the absence of warmth in her demeanor. She spoke of Thorn's death as one might discuss a minor inconvenience. Poirot, however, seemed intrigued. "You are a woman of keen observation, mademoiselle. Did you notice anything unusual in the office? A sound? A smell, perhaps?" For the first time, Miss Henshaw hesitated, her fingers tightening slightly on her gloves. "A smell? No, nothing specific. The office was stuffy, as always, full of dust and ink. I was too focused on my business to notice trifles, but her eyes flicked to the side, a movement so brief it might have gone, unnoticed by a less observant man. Poirot pressed gently. "And your relationship with Monsieur Thorn, was it purely professional?" Her lips thinned. "Of course. He was competent, or so I thought until recently. I had no personal dealings with him." Her tone was final. A door slammed shut. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Merci, mademoiselle. You have been most helpful. We may speak again." As she rose, her silk skirts rustling, Hastings murmured, "Cold as ice, that one. Do you think she's hiding something?" Poirot tapped his temple. "She is a woman of control, Hastings, but even the controlled have secrets. Her mention of discrepancies intrigues me. We must see this ledger of hers, Timothy Wells." The final suspect, Timothy Wells, was a stark contrast to the others. A lanky youth of no more than 22, he entered the anteroom with the air of a frightened rabbit. His pale face was slick with sweat, and his cheap suit hung loosely on his frame, as if he had not eaten well in weeks. His hands trembled as he sat, and his eyes darted between Poirot and Japp, avoiding direct contact. "Monsieur Wells," Poirot said, his voice soothing, almost paternal. "You are the clerk here, oui? You worked closely with Monsieur Thorn." Timothy nodded, his Adam's apple bobbing. Yes, sir. I fetched papers, made tea, ran errands. Mr. Thorn was kind, taught me the books." His voice was soft, tinged with a Cockney lilt, and his fingers twisted a frayed cuff. "And this morning?" Poirot prompted. "What did you see? What did you do?" The boy swallowed hard. "I brought tea at 9, like always. Mr. Thorn was at his desk, working. Miss Henshaw came in after, and I heard them talking, arguing maybe about her accounts. I left to deliver some letters, and when I came back—" His voice broke, and he looked down, his hands clenching. "He was dead, sir. I found him." Just before noon, Poirot leaned forward, his gaze gentle but unrelenting. "And the office, monsieur? Was it locked when you returned?" Timothy's eyes widened. "Yes, sir. I had to use my key to get in. The door was locked and the window was shut tight. I don't understand how—" Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. "Calm yourself, jeune homme. Tell me, did you notice anything unusual? A sound, perhaps? Or an odor?" The boy's face paled further, if that were possible. "An odor. Maybe something sharp, like chemicals, but I thought it was just the ink or the cleaning stuff we use. I didn't think—" He trailed off, his eyes filling with panic. Japp, growing impatient, interjected. "Come now, lad, out with it. Did you see anyone else in the office? Anyone at all?" Timothy shook his head vigorously. "No, sir, no one. Just Mr. Thorn, and then Miss Henshaw earlier. Mr. Blackwood was out all morning." His voice trembled, and he looked as if he might bolt from the room. Poirot's expression softened. "Merci, Monsieur Wells. You have done well to tell us this. Rest now, but stay near." As Timothy stumbled out, Hastings shook his head. "Poor chap's terrified. Do you think he's involved?" Poirot's lips curved in a faint smile. "Involved?" Perhaps not in the way you mean, Hastings, but he knows something, or fears something. That chemical odor he mentioned, it matches what I detected. This is no coincidence. The gathering threads. With the interviews concluded, Poirot, Japp, and Hastings returned to the office where Thorne had died. The room seemed smaller now, oppressive, as if the walls themselves held secrets. Poirot stood by the desk, his fingers tracing the torn edge of the ledger where the missing page had been. 3 suspects, 3 stories, he mused, each with access, each with a possible motive. Monsieur Blackwood, with his nervous hands and vague alibi. Mademoiselle Henshaw, with her sharp eyes and talk of discrepancies. And young Wells, so frightened he can scarcely speak. Japp grunted. Blackwood's the one to watch, if you ask me. That club story's thin, and he's got the most to gain with Thorne out of the way. Partners fall out all the time. Poirot shook his head. Do not be so quick, mon ami. Motive alone is not enough. We must consider the method. The locked door, the latched window, the chemical odor. These are not the work of an impulsive man. This murder was planned, with care and cunning. Hastings, ever practical, ventured a thought. What about Miss Henshaw? She's got the money to hire someone, and she was cross about those accounts. Could she have arranged it? Poirot's eyes twinkled. Possible, Hastings, but unlikely. Her anger is real, but it is directed at the loss of her money, not at Thorne himself. And Monsieur Wells, his fear is not that of a guilty man, but of one who has seen or heard too much. Japp closed his notebook with a snap. Well, Poirot, you've got your work cut out. I'll check Blackwood's alibi at the club and see if we can trace that chemical smell. What's your next move? Poirot adjusted his hat, his expression serene. I shall return to the ledger, Inspector, and to the room itself. The answers lie there, in the details, and Hercule Poirot never overlooks the details. As they left the office, the fog seemed to close in, a silent witness to the mystery unfolding. Hastings glanced at Poirot, whose calm demeanor belied the intensity of his thoughts. It's a devil of a case, Poirot, he said. 3 suspects, a locked room, and a missing page. Where do we begin? Poirot smiled, his mustache curving upward. We begin, Hastings, with the little gray cells. They will lead us to the truth, as always. Chapter 3, The Ledger's Secrets. The fog clung to Chancery Lane like a jealous lover, its tendrils curling around the gas lamps that flickered feebly against the gloom. Inside the offices of Messrs. Thorne and Blackwood, Hercule, Poirot stood alone, save for the steadfast presence of Captain Hastings, who hovered near the door, his face a mixture of curiosity and unease. The body of Ernest Thorne had been taken away, leaving the office eerily silent, as if the very walls mourned the loss of their meticulous occupant. The desk, with its open ledger and spilled ink, remained the focal point, a mute witness to the crime that had unfolded within these locked confines. Poirot, his gloved hands clasped behind his back, paced slowly around the desk, his eyes darting from the ledger to the shelves, then to the ventilation grate above. The faint chemical odor he had detected earlier lingered, elusive but persistent, like a whisper of guilt in the air. This ledger, Hastings, he said, his voice low and precise, it is the heart of our mystery. A page is missing, and with it, the truth of Monsieur Thorne's death. Hastings, ever eager to contribute, stepped closer, peering at the ledger's open page. It's all numbers and names, Poirot. Looks like accounts for Miss Henshaw's estate, as you thought. But what could be on that missing page to drive someone to murder? Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his mind at work. Précisément, mon ami. The missing page is not merely paper, it is evidence. Evidence of what? We must discover. Let us examine this ledger with care. He donned a pair of spectacles, not because he needed them, but because, as Hastings knew, Poirot believed they lent an air of scholarly precision to his investigations. The ledger was a marvel of order, each entry penned in Thorne's meticulous hand, the columns of figures aligned with almost obsessive neatness. It detailed the financial dealings of Miss Clara Henshaw's estate, rents from properties in Mayfair, dividends from investments, and payments to various creditors. Yet, as Poirot's finger traced the entries, he paused at the gap where the missing page had been torn away. The tear was jagged, suggesting haste, but the surrounding pages were undisturbed, as if the thief had known exactly what to take. "Observe, Hastings," Poirot said, pointing to the faint smudge of ink along the tear. This was not removed with care. The hand that took it was hurried, perhaps panicked. But why take only one page? Why not the entire ledger if the secret was so damning? Hastings frowned, his honest brow furrowing. Perhaps they didn't have time? Or maybe the page was all they needed to hide something specific, a transaction maybe? Poirot nodded, his eyes gleaming. A transaction? Oui. Or perhaps a pattern. Let us see what the remaining pages tell us. He turned back to the ledger, flipping carefully through the entries preceding and following the missing page. The accounts appeared routine at first. Sums paid, sums received, all balanced with Thorne's characteristic precision. But as Poirot's gaze sharpened, he noted a series of small, irregular withdrawals, each marked with an obscure reference, C.B. Misk. The amounts were modest, never more than £50, but they appeared frequently, scattered across months. C.B. Misk, Poirot murmured, tapping the page. What do you make of this, Hastings? Hastings leaned over, squinting at the notation. C.B., could that be Cedric Blackwood? Miscellaneous expenses, perhaps? But why so many, and why so vague? Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. Vague, yes, and therein lies the suspicion. A bookkeeper as precise as Monsieur Thorne does not use miscellaneous lightly. These entries, they are a disguise, I think, for something less innocent. He closed the ledger with a soft thud and turned his attention to the desk itself, running his fingers along its edges, searching for hidden compartments or forgotten clues. His search was rewarded when he pressed a panel beneath the drawer, revealing a small, concealed space. Inside lay a bundle of letters, tied with a faded ribbon. Poirot's eyes sparkled as he carefully untied the bundle, revealing correspondence between Thorne and a bank manager, dated over the past year. The letters were polite but firm, with Thorne inquiring about discrepancies in the firm's account, specifically withdrawals authorized by Blackwood that lacked proper documentation. Mon Dieu, Poirot said softly, holding a letter to the light. Monsieur Thorne was not merely a bookkeeper, he was a watchdog. These letters suggest he suspected his partner of financial impropriety. Perhaps the missing page held proof. Of this, Hastings, reading over Poirot's shoulder, let out a low whistle. Embezzlement, you mean? Blackwood siphoning off funds? That would explain why he was so jittery when we spoke to him. Poirot held up a hand, cautioning haste. Possible, Hastings, but we must not leap to conclusions. The letters show suspicion, not proof, and we must consider the others. Miss Henshaw, with her talk of discrepancies, and young Wells, with his frightened eyes. Each has a part in this puzzle. He returned the letters to their hiding place, ensuring the desk appeared untouched, and turned his attention to the room itself. The ventilation grate, which had caught his eye earlier, beckoned. Poirot climbed onto a chair, a task he performed with surprising agility for a man of his fastidious nature, and peered into the grate. The brass was tarnished, but the interior was clean, save for a faint residue that glistened faintly under the gaslight. He scraped a sample onto a handkerchief, folding it carefully into his pocket. "This residue, Hastings," he said, descending with care. "It is connected to the chemical odor we detected. Not ink, not dust, but something deliberate. A poison, perhaps. Delivered through the air." Hastings' eyes widened. Poison? In a locked room? But how, Poirot? The door was locked, the window latched. How could anyone get it in here? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "That, mon ami, is the question. But the grate, it is a possibility, no? A small device, a canister perhaps, could release its contents slowly, leaving no trace but this faint smell and residue. We must have this analyzed." He moved to the window, checking the latch once more. It was secure, the frame undisturbed, ruling out entry from outside. The door, too, showed no signs of tampering, its key still in the lock on the inside. Poirot's mind churned, piecing together the fragments of the scene, the ledger, the letters, the grate, the odor. Each was a thread in the tapestry of murder, but the pattern remained elusive. As they prepared to leave, Inspector Japp returned, his face grim. "Got the preliminary report from the coroner, Poirot. No obvious wounds on Thorne, no signs of a struggle. They're leaning toward heart failure, but I told them about that chemical smell. They're running tests now, but it'll take time." Poirot nodded, his expression serene but intense. "Time, Inspector, is what we must use wisely. The ledger points to financial secrets, the grate to a method most ingenious. We must now verify the alibis of our suspects and uncover what each conceals." Hastings, ever the optimist, ventured a thought. If Blackwood was stealing, and Thorne found out, that's motive enough for murder. But Miss Henshaw, she seemed furious about her accounts. Could she have confronted Thorne and gone too far? Poirot shook his head. "Her anger is real, Hastings, but it is the anger of a woman wronged, not a murderer. And Wells, his fear suggests knowledge, not guilt. We must dig deeper, into their lives, their secrets." Japp scratched his head, clearly frustrated. "Dig all you like, Poirot, but that locked room's got me stumped. No one could have got in or out without a key, and Wells had the only spare." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Ah, but that is where you err, mon ami. The locked room is not impenetrable. It is a trick, a sleight of hand. The murderer entered, killed, and left, all while maintaining the illusion of a sealed space. How? That is what the little gray cells will uncover." As they stepped into the fog, Poirot paused, his gaze distant. "The ledger, Hastings, is the phantom of this case. It haunts the living, Blackwood with his debts, Henshaw with her losses, Wells with his fear. But it will also reveal the truth, for no secret can hide from Hercule Poirot." The street was quiet, the fog swallowing their footsteps as they walked away, leaving the office to its ghosts. Poirot's mind, however, was far from quiet, already weaving the threads of motive, method, and opportunity into a pattern only he could see. Chapter 4. The Partner's Alibi. The fog had relented slightly by the time Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings emerged from the offices of Messrs. Thorne and Blackwood, though the air remained heavy with the damp chill of a London November. Poirot, his overcoat buttoned to the chin and his hat tilted at a precise angle, led the way toward Pall Mall, where Cedric Blackwood claimed to have spent the morning of Ernest Thorne's death. Hastings, striding beside him, clutched his own coat against the cold, his mind still reeling from the locked room puzzle and the faint chemical odor that clung to their investigation like a shadow. Blackwood's story about the Athenaeum Club, Poirot, Hastings said, his breath visible in the chilly air. Do you think there's anything to it? He seemed awfully nervous for a man who was just at his club. Poirot's green eyes flickered with amusement, though his expression remained serious. Nervous, oui, mon ami, and with reason, perhaps. A man does not fidget so with his cigarette case unless his conscience is uneasy. We shall see what the Athenaeum reveals. Alibis, like mirrors, often reflect only what one wishes to see. They reach the imposing facade of the Athenaeum Club, its classical columns looming through the mist like sentinels of respectability. The porter, a stout man with a walrus mustache and an air of unwavering propriety, greeted them at the entrance. Poirot, with his usual blend of charm and authority, introduced himself and explained their purpose, mentioning Inspector Japp's involvement to lend official weight. "Mr. Cedric Blackwood, you say?" The porter, Mr. Grayson, replied, consulting a leather-bound logbook. "Yes, he was here yesterday morning, arrived just after 10, as I recall. Signed in, took a seat in the smoking room. Regular member he is, though not as frequent as some." Poirot's mustache twitched. "And did he remain long, Monsieur Grayson? Or did he, perhaps, step out for a time?" The porter's brow furrowed, and he rubbed his chin, his memory prodded by Poirot's gentle insistence. "Now, you mention it, sir, he did leave for a bit. Said he needed a breath of fresh air. Odd, given the fog, but there you are. He was gone perhaps 20 minutes, maybe half an hour before he returned. Sat reading the Times until luncheon, then left again around 2. Poirot's eyes gleamed. 20 minutes, you say? Most interesting. And during this promenade, did anyone accompany him?" Grayson shook his head. "Not that I saw, sir. He went alone and came back alone. Looked a bit flushed, mind you, but I thought it was just the cold." "Merci, Monsieur Grayson," Poirot said, bowing slightly. "You have been most helpful." As they stepped back into the street, Poirot's expression was one of quiet satisfaction, like a chess player who has spotted an opponent's misstep. Hastings, catching the look, pressed him. "Well, Poirot, that's a hole in Blackwood's story, isn't it? He said he was at the club all morning, but he slipped out for half an hour, plenty of time to get back to the office and, well, do whatever was done." Poirot raised a gloved hand, cautioning haste. "Possible, Hastings, but we must not assume. 20 minutes is time enough for many things, but murder by gas in a locked room? That requires planning, precision. We must learn where Monsieur Blackwood went, and why their next stop was a discreet inquiry at a nearby tobacconist, where Blackwood was known to purchase his cigarettes. The shopkeeper, a wiry man with ink-stained fingers, confirmed that Blackwood had stopped by briefly the previous morning, purchasing a tin of his usual Turkish blend. "Seemed in a hurry," the man added. "Didn't stop to chat like he usually does." Poirot nodded, filing this away. "A man in a hurry. yet he claims a leisurely walk. Curious, non? He turned to Hastings, his voice low. We must return to the office, mon ami. There is more to uncover, and I suspect Monsieur Blackwood's hands have not told us all their secrets. Back at the office, the air felt colder, the silence heavier, as if the walls themselves resented the intrusion of death. Poirot resumed his examination of Thorne's desk, his fingers probing for further hidden compartments. He found none, but his attention was drawn to a small brass key, half hidden beneath a pile of blotting paper. It was not the key to the office door. Japp had confirmed that was still in the lock, but it was finely crafted, suggesting a specific purpose. This key, Hastings, Poirot said, holding it to the light. It is not for the door, nor for the desk. Perhaps a safe? A private box? We must discover its lock. He slipped the key into his pocket alongside the handkerchief containing the residue from the ventilation grate. Hastings, peering over Poirot's shoulder, ventured a theory. If Blackwood was stealing, as those letters you found suggest, maybe this key opens something incriminating. A safe where he kept records of his thefts? Poirot's smile was faint but approving. A good thought, Hastings, though we must not limit our imagination. This key may belong to another, or it may be a red herring. But it is a clue, and Hercule Poirot does not ignore clues. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Inspector Japp, his face flushed from the cold, and his mood a mix of determination and frustration. Poirot, I've got something, he said, producing a small notebook. Had my men check the local chemists. That chemical smell you mentioned? One shop, just round the corner, sold a small canister of industrial gas, chlorine-based, used for cleaning, but deadly in high doses, to a man matching Blackwood's description 2 days ago. Paid cash, no name, given Poirot's eyes narrowed. Chlorine-based, you say? Most interesting. Such a gas could be released slowly, through a grate, perhaps, to kill without a trace. And Monsieur Blackwood, with his convenient absence from the club, is our likely purchaser. Japp nodded, though his expression was skeptical. Maybe, but how'd he get it into the office? The door was locked, the window latched, and how'd he get out without being seen? Poirot paced, his hands clasped behind his back. The method, Inspector, is ingenious but not impossible. Consider a small canister placed in the ventilation grate before Thorne arrived. The gas releases slowly, silently, while Blackwood is at his club, or so he claims. He steps out, perhaps to ensure the deed is done, then returns, his alibi intact. The key, the ledger, the missing page, all point to a man desperate to hide his crimes. Hastings, catching the thread, interjected, "But what about the locked door? If Blackwood was in the office, how did he lock it from the inside and get out?" Poirot stopped, his head tilted as if listening to an inner voice. That, Hastings, is the heart of the trick. The door was locked. But not necessarily by Thorne. A spare key, perhaps, or a clever manipulation. We must examine the lock itself. He approached the office door, its heavy oak unyielding under his scrutiny. The lock was sturdy, a standard pin tumbler design, but Poirot noticed faint scratches around the keyhole, barely visible to the untrained eye. "These marks," he said, pointing, "they suggest tampering, or perhaps the use of a second key. We must ask young Wells if another key exists." Japp, scribbling in his notebook, looked up. "You think Blackwood had a spare? But why leave the key in the lock inside? That's what stumps me." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "To create the illusion, mon ami. A locked room suggests no one entered, no one left, but illusions are made to be broken. We shall see what Monsieur Wells knows of spare keys, and what Monsieur Blackwood's hands reveal when pressed. As they prepared to leave, Poirot paused, his gaze lingering on the ventilation grate. "This gas, Inspector, have it analyzed with utmost care. Its composition will tell us much. And Monsieur Blackwood's movements, we must trace every step of his walk from the club." Hastings, ever loyal, followed Poirot into the fog, his mind buzzing with questions. "It's a devilish plan, Poirot, if Blackwood's our man. But what if Miss Henshaw or Wells had a hand in it? They both had access, after all." Poirot adjusted his scarf, his expression serene. "All are possible, Hastings, but the threads point to Blackwood. His alibi crumbles. His motive, financial ruin, grows clearer. Yet we must not ignore the others. Miss Henshaw's anger, Wells's fear. They are pieces of the puzzle, and Hercule Poirot will fit them together." The fog swallowed their figures as they walked away, the mystery deepening with each step. The Athenaeum's porter, the tobacconist, the chemist, all had added to the tapestry of suspicion, but the truth remained just out of reach, hidden in the locked room and the secrets of a missing page. Chapter 5. The Client's Temper. The fog had begun to lift from London's streets, though a chill lingered as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings made their way to the elegant town house of Miss Clara Henshaw in Belgravia. The morning sun struggled through the haze, casting a pale glow on the white stucco facades and polished brass knockers of the square. Poirot, his cane tapping rhythmically on the pavement, appeared unruffled by the cold, his mind wholly occupied with the puzzle of Ernest Thorne's death. Hastings, bundled in his overcoat, glanced at his friend, noting the faint gleam in Poirot's eyes that signaled the little gray cells were at work. "Miss Henshaw, Poirot," Hastings ventured as they approached the house. "She was awfully sharp with us yesterday. Do you think she's hiding something? That business about discrepancies in her accounts, it sounded like she blamed Thorne, but what if she had a motive of her own?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of amusement or agreement. Hastings could never quite tell. "You are learning, mon ami, to suspect the unsaid. Mademoiselle Henshaw is a woman of fire beneath her ice, and such fire can burn dangerously. We shall see what her temper reveals today." The door was answered by a maid, a nervous girl in a starched cap, who led them through a hall adorned with gilt-framed portraits and heavy drapes to a drawing-room of restrained opulence. The furniture was mahogany, polished to a mirror-like sheen, and a fire crackled in the grate, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Miss Clara Henshaw stood by a tall window, her silhouette framed against the gauze of morning light. She turned as they entered, her burgundy dress as severe as her expression, her gray eyes assessing Poirot with a mixture of curiosity and defiance. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings," she said, her voice crisp as frost. "I expected you might return. Have you found the thief who tampered with my accounts, or are you here to waste more of my time?" She gestured to two chairs, her movement precise, almost regal, but there was a tightness in her jaw that betrayed her composure. Poirot bowed slightly, his manner impeccable. "Mademoiselle, your time is as precious to me as my own. We are here to uncover the truth of Monsieur Thorne's death, and your accounts, I believe, are central to this tragedy. May we discuss your visit to the office yesterday?" Miss Henshaw sat, her hands folded in her lap, her gloves discarded on a side table. "I told you everything. I went to see Thorne at 9:30 to discuss errors in my estate's ledger. He was evasive, promised to investigate, but I sensed he was hiding something. I left before 11, and he was alive." Her tone was firm, but her eyes flickered as if revisiting the scene. Poirot leaned forward, his gaze gentle but unrelenting. "And yet, mademoiselle, you returned to the office later that morning, did you not? A second visit, unannounced, which you did not mention yesterday." The room seemed to still, the crackle of the fire suddenly loud. Miss Henshaw's lips parted, but she recovered swiftly, her voice steady. "Who told you that?" "The maid, I suppose. She's always eavesdropping." "Yes, I returned around 11:30. I had forgotten a document, a receipt I meant to show Thorne, but he was already dead when I arrived. The door was locked, and I had to wait for that trembling clerk, Wells, to let me in." Hastings, scribbling in his notebook, glanced up. "You didn't mention this yesterday, Miss Henshaw." "Why keep it secret?" Her eyes flashed, a spark of her temper surfacing. "Secret? I kept nothing secret. It slipped my mind in the shock of finding Thorne dead. I had no reason to kill him. He was my bookkeeper, not my enemy. If anyone had motive, it was that partner of his, Blackwood. I've long suspected he's been dipping into my funds." Poirot's eyebrows rose, though his expression remained serene. "A grave accusation, mademoiselle. You believe Monsieur Blackwood was stealing from you? What led you to this suspicion?" Miss Henshaw's fingers tightened on the arm of her chair, her knuckles pale. "Small sums, Monsieur Poirot, disappearing over months. 100 here, 50 there, always excused as miscellaneous expenses." Thorne noticed it, too. He hinted as much during our meeting, though he was too loyal to Blackwood to say it outright. I pressed him, but he clammed up. That's why I went back, to demand answers. Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing her words. "And when you returned, you found him dead. Tell me, mademoiselle, did you notice anything unusual in the office? A sound, a smell, perhaps?" She frowned, her brow creasing as she considered. "A smell? Yes, now you mention it. There was something sharp, like ammonia or cleaning fluid, but faint. I thought it was the office's usual staleness. I was too distracted by Thorne's body to think much of it." Her voice wavered slightly, the first crack in her armor of composure. Poirot's eyes gleamed, though he kept his tone mild. "Most interesting. And the ledger, did you see it open on the desk? Was a page missing, perhaps?" Miss Henshaw shook her head. "I didn't touch the ledger. I saw it open, yes, but I was focused on Thorne, his face so still, so wrong. I called for Wells and he came running. That's all I know." Hastings, unable to resist, leaned forward. "But you could have taken the page, Miss Henshaw. You were alone with the body before Wells arrived. If it incriminated you—" Her eyes blazed and she rose, her voice cutting like a whip. "How dare you, Captain Hastings? I am no thief, nor a murderer. If I wanted Thorne dead, I'd have done it with my own hands, not some cowardly trick. My quarrel was with Blackwood's mismanagement, not Thorne's loyalty." She paused, her chest heaving, then sat abruptly, as if regretting her outburst. Poirot raised a placating hand. "Calm yourself, mademoiselle. We seek only the truth. Your candor is most helpful. One final question. Did you see anyone else near the office during your second visit? A passerby, perhaps, or Monsieur Blackwood himself?" She shook her head, her composure restored. "No one." The street was empty, the fog thick. I saw only Wells when he arrived to unlock the door. "Merci," Poirot said, rising. "You have given us much to consider. We may call again if you permit." As they left the drawing room, the maid hovering in the hall caught Poirot's eye. He paused, his voice soft. "Mademoiselle, a moment. You saw your mistress return to the office yesterday. Oui? Did she carry anything? A document, perhaps?" The maid, flustered, glanced nervously toward the drawing room. "Yes, sir. She had a paper in her hand when she left, but I didn't see what it was. She was in a right state when she came back, pale as a ghost, muttering about Mr. Thorne being dead." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Merci beaucoup." As they stepped into the street, he turned to Hastings, his voice low. "The maid confirms the second visit and Mademoiselle Henshaw's distress. But her temper, Hastings, it is a fire that burns hot but not murderous, I think. Her anger is for Blackwood, not Thorne." Hastings frowned, adjusting his hat. "She's hiding something, though, Poirot. That second visit, she didn't mention it until we pressed her, and she had time to take that page before Wells arrived." Poirot's smile was faint but knowing. "Possible, mon ami, but unlikely. Her story holds the ring of truth, and the chemical odor she noticed matches our own observations. No, the key lies elsewhere, with Blackwood's alibi, perhaps, or Wells' fear. We must now see what the young clerk conceals." As they walked toward their next destination, Poirot's mind churned, weaving the threads of Miss Henshaw's testimony into the growing tapestry of the case. Her temper, her suspicions of Blackwood, her unmentioned second visit, all were pieces of the puzzle, but the picture remained incomplete. The locked room, the missing page, the faint whiff of poison. These were the notes of a deadly symphony, and Poirot was determined to conduct its resolution. Chapter 6. The Clerk's Fear. The streets of London were cloaked in a damp chill as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings made their way to the modest boarding house in Bloomsbury, where Timothy Wells, the young clerk, resided. The fog had retreated, but a gray pall lingered, as if the city itself were holding its breath, awaiting the unraveling of Ernest Thorne's murder. Poirot, his cane tapping a steady rhythm on the cobblestones, was silent, his green eyes distant yet alert, the little gray cells working tirelessly beneath his immaculate exterior. Hastings, walking beside him, felt the weight of the case pressing on his shoulders, the locked room and missing ledger page, a puzzle that seemed to grow more intricate with each step. "Poor young Wells," Hastings said, breaking the silence. "He looked scared out of his wits when we questioned him. Do you think he's mixed up in this, Poirot? Or is he just frightened by what he saw?" Poirot's mustache curved slightly, a sign of his mind at work. "Fear, mon ami, is a most revealing emotion. It can betray guilt, yes, but also knowledge that one wishes to hide or fears to reveal. Young Wells knows more than he has told us, and we shall discover what it is." The boarding house was a narrow, red brick building, its paint peeling and its windows dim with grime. The landlady, a stout woman with a suspicious squint, ushered them up a creaking staircase to Timothy's room on the third floor. "He's a quiet lad," she said, her voice tinged with disapproval. "Keeps to himself, always reading those books of his. Chemistry, of all things. Fancy that for a clerk." Poirot's eyes gleamed at this, though he said nothing, merely nodding politely as the landlady knocked on the door. Timothy Wells opened it, his pale face even more drawn than before, his eyes red-rimmed as if he had not slept. His cheap suit was rumpled, and his hands trembled as he gestured them inside. The room was small, cluttered with books and papers, a single gas lamp casting a feeble glow. A narrow bed stood in one corner, and beneath it, half hidden, was a locked wooden box that caught Poirot's attention immediately. "Monsieur Wells," Poirot began, his voice gentle but firm, "we meet again. You are distressed, I see, and this is understandable. The death of Monsieur Thorne is a shock, but you must tell us all you know, for the truth, it cannot remain hidden." Timothy sank onto the bed, his hands twisting together. "I've told you everything, sir," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I brought tea at 9, saw Miss Henshaw come and go, then left to run errands. When I got back, just before noon, Mr. Thorne was dead. The door was locked, and I used my key to get in." His eyes darted to the floor, avoiding Poirot's gaze. Hastings, standing by the door, frowned. "You mentioned a sharp smell, Timothy, like chemicals. Can you be more specific? It's important." The boy's face paled further, and he licked his lips nervously. It was like something from the chemist's, maybe ammonia or something stronger. I thought it was the cleaning fluid we use for the floors, but it was different, sharper. I didn't think much of it then. I was too shocked by Mr. Thorne." Poirot nodded, his expression serene, but his eyes piercing. "And this smell, it was in the office when you found him?" "Not before. When you brought the tea?" Timothy hesitated, his fingers tightening on his knees. "No, sir, not when I brought the tea. It was only when I came back, but I swear I didn't do anything. I just found him like that." His voice rose, a note of panic creeping in. Poirot raised a placating hand. "Calm yourself, jeune homme. No one accuses you, yet, but you are a student of chemistry, are you not?" He gestured to the books stacked on a rickety table, their titles visible. "Principles of Chemical Analysis, Industrial Gases and Their Uses. Such knowledge is unusual for a clerk. Tell me, what is your interest in this science?" Timothy's eyes widened, and he glanced at the books as if seeing them for the first time. "It's just a hobby, sir," he stammered. "I want to better myself, maybe get a job at a laboratory someday. Mr. Thorne knew, he encouraged me, said I had a good head for figures and science, but I'd never use it to hurt anyone." Poirot's gaze softened, though his scrutiny remained unrelenting. "I believe you, Monsieur Wells, when you say you meant no harm. But tell me, did you overhear anything unusual that morning? A conversation, perhaps, between Monsieur Thorne and another?" The boy's hands stilled, and for a moment he seemed to shrink into himself. I shouldn't say, sir. It's not my place to speak ill of anyone." His voice was barely audible, and his eyes flicked to the locked box under the bed, a movement so swift it might have gone unnoticed by a less observant man. Poirot, however, missed nothing. "Monsieur Wells," he said, his tone now almost paternal, "you are frightened, and this fear will consume you unless you share it. What did you hear, and what do you keep in that box?" Timothy's face crumpled, and he buried his head in his hands. "It was Mr. Blackwood," he whispered, his voice muffled. "I heard him arguing with Mr. Thorne, not yesterday, but a few days before. I was in the back room, sorting files, and they didn't know I was there. Mr. Blackwood was angry, saying something about the ledger, about how Mr. Thorne was poking his nose where it wasn't wanted. Mr. Thorne said he'd go to the bank if he had to, that he couldn't let it go on. I didn't understand it all, but it scared me. Hastings, unable to contain himself, leaned forward. "Good Lord, Timothy, why didn't you tell us this before? That's motive. Blackwood covering up something crooked." Poirot shot Hastings a warning glance, silencing him. "And this box, Monsieur Wells," he continued, pointing to the bed. "What does it contain? More secrets, perhaps?" Timothy's eyes filled with tears, but he crawled to the bed and pulled out the box, his hands shaking as he unlocked it with a key from his pocket. Inside were notebooks filled with chemical equations, lecture notes, and diagrams. Nothing incriminating, only the earnest scribblings of a young man eager to learn. "It's just my studies," he said, his voice breaking. "I didn't want anyone to think I was involved because of my books. I'm no killer, sir, I swear it." Poirot examined the notebooks briefly, his fingers turning the pages with care. "These are the work of a diligent mind," he said, his tone reassuring. "You have no cause for shame, Monsieur Wells. But your silence, it protects no one. If you hear more, you must tell me. The truth is your shield." As they left the boarding house, Hastings shook his head. "Poor lad's terrified, Poirot. He's no murderer, but he's hiding something, maybe just fear of losing his job. That argument he overheard, though, it points straight at Blackwood." Poirot nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Oui, Hastings, it strengthens our suspicion of Monsieur Blackwood. An argument over the ledger, threats of exposure, these are the seeds of murder. But we must not forget the method, the chemical odor, the locked room. These require knowledge, perhaps even of chemistry, though I believe young Wells is innocent of that crime." They paused on the street, the gas lamps now glowing against the gathering dusk. Poirot's mind churned, weaving Timothy's testimony into the fabric of the case. "The boy's fear is real," he said, almost to himself. "But it is the fear of a witness, not a culprit. He heard too much, and it has made him a target of his own imagination. We must protect him, Hastings, and press Monsieur Blackwood further." Hastings adjusted his hat, his voice eager. "What's next, then? Back to Blackwood? Or do we chase down that chemical lead?" Poirot's smile was faint but resolute. "Both, mon ami. The chemical, it is the key to the method, and Blackwood, he is the key to the motive. But we must also find that missing page, or what remains of it. The ledger's secrets will not stay hidden from Hercule Poirot." As they walked into the evening, the city's pulse seemed to quicken, as if sensing the approaching climax of the mystery. The clerk's fear, the partner's alibi, the client's temper, all were threads in a tapestry of deceit, and Poirot was determined to unravel it with his unmatched precision. Chapter 7. The Missing Page. The London dusk settled over Chancery Lane, its gas lamps casting pools of amber light that struggled against the encroaching shadows. Hercule Poirot, his overcoat buttoned against the evening chill, stood once more in the offices of Messrs. Thorne and Blackwood, the scene of Ernest Thorne's mysterious death. Captain Hastings, ever at his side, shifted uneasily, his gaze darting to the desk where the ledger still lay, its torn edge a silent accusation. The faint chemical odor, now barely perceptible, lingered like a ghost, a reminder of the poison that had claimed the bookkeeper's life. Inspector Japp had joined them, his notebook tucked under his arm, his face etched with the dogged determination of a man grappling with an impossible puzzle. Poirot's green eyes, sharp and unyielding, surveyed the room with a precision that missed nothing. "The missing page, mes amis," he said, his voice low but resonant. "It is the heart of this crime. It was taken not for what it was, but for what it revealed. We must find it, or what remains of it, to unmask the murderer. Hastings, rubbing his hands against the cold, ventured a question. But Poirot, if the page was taken to hide something, wouldn't the killer have destroyed it? Burned it, perhaps, or torn it to bits? Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing beneath it. Précisément, Hastings. A murderer plans carefully, but panic betrays even the cleverest mind. Let us search this room once more, with the eyes of suspicion. He moved to the desk, his gloved fingers tracing the ledger's jagged tier. The surrounding pages, filled with Thorne's meticulous entries, offered no immediate clues, but Poirot's attention shifted to the fireplace, a small blackened grate tucked into the corner of the office. The hearth was cold, its ashes undisturbed since the previous day, but Poirot knelt before it, his movements deliberate. Using a poker, he sifted through the ash, his eyes narrowing as he uncovered a fragment of paper, its edges charred but its ink still legible. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, lifting the fragment with care. It was no larger than a calling card, but it bore a few lines of Thorne's spidery handwriting, a date, a sum of £200, and the notation, C.B. Trans. The rest was lost to the flames, but Poirot's face lit with triumph. This, mes amis, is a piece of the phantom ledger, and it points, as we suspected, to Monsieur Blackwood Japp, peering over Poirot's shoulder, let out a low whistle. C.B. Cedric Blackwood, clear as day. A transfer, you say? Sounds like he was moving money around, probably to cover his tracks. But why burn just one page and leave the rest? Poirot rose, brushing ash from his gloves. Because, Inspector, the page was specific, damningly so. It held proof of Blackwood's misdeeds, perhaps a single transaction that could not be explained away. To take the entire ledger would be too obvious, to burn one page, less so. But the murderer did not count on the little gray cells of Hercule Poirot Hastings. His curiosity piqued, gestured to the fragment. That's evidence, then. Enough to confront Blackwood, surely. Poirot shook his head, his expression cautious. Evidence, oui, but not enough to convict. We have motive, we have method, but we must understand the how, the locked room, the gas, the key. Let us consider the ventilation grate once more. He approached the brass grate above the desk, its surface now familiar, but no less significant. The residue he had collected earlier had been sent for analysis, but Poirot examined the grate again, his fingers probing its edges. He found nothing new, yet his mind churned, piecing together the mechanics of the crime. The gas. It entered here, he said, almost to himself. A small canister concealed within, releasing its poison slowly. The murderer needed only to place it, then leave, locking the door behind them. Japp frowned, scratching his head. But how, Poirot? The door was locked from the inside, key still in the lock, and the window latched tight. Even if Blackwood used a spare key, how'd he get the door locked again after he left? Poirot's eyes gleamed, his voice soft but certain. That, mon ami, is the trick. A spare key, perhaps, or a clever manipulation. The scratches on the lock, did you notice them? They suggest force, or perhaps an attempt to mimic a locked door. We must ask young Wells if another key exists, and we must press Monsieur Blackwood on his movements. Hastings, ever practical, interjected. What about Miss Henshaw? She was in the office after Thorne died. She could have taken the page, or even placed the canister herself. Poirot nodded, his expression thoughtful. Possible, Hastings, but her anger is for Blackwood, not Thorn. The chemical odor she noticed aligns with our findings, and her second visit, though concealed, does not make her a murderer. No, the fragment points to Blackwood, and the grate to his method. Jap, growing impatient, closed his notebook with a snap. Right then. I'll have my men check for any spare keys in the office records, and I'll lean on that chemist again about the gas canister. If Blackwood bought it, we'll have him. Poirot raised a hand, his tone measured. Patience, Inspector. The chemist's evidence is promising, but we must also trace the canister's origin. Was it bespoke or common? And the key we found, its purpose remains a mystery. We must search Blackwood's home, his papers, for further clues. As they prepared to leave, Poirot paused by the desk, his gaze lingering on the ledger. "This fragment," he said, holding it up, "is but a shadow of the truth. The missing page held the secret that cost Thorn his life, but it is the living, Blackwood, Henshaw, Wells, who will lead us to it." They stepped into the street, the evening air sharp with the promise of frost. Hastings glanced at Poirot, whose calm demeanor belied the intensity of his thoughts. "It's coming together, isn't it, Poirot? Blackwood's looking guiltier by the minute, but that locked room, I still can't see how he did it." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "The locked room, Hastings, is a challenge to the imagination, but not to the little gray cells. The murderer wishes us to see a fortress, but it is merely a stage, set for deception. We shall find the truth, and soon." As they walked into the night, the city's pulse seemed to quicken, echoing the rhythm of Poirot's relentless pursuit. The fragment of the ledger, the residue in the grate, the scratches on the lock, all were threads in a tapestry of murder, and Poirot was weaving them together with his unmatched precision. Chapter 8. The Partner's Motive. The lamps of London glowed feebly against the gathering darkness as Hercule Poirot, Captain Hastings, and Inspector Japp stood in the shadowed office of Messrs. Thorn and Blackwood. The air was heavy with the memory of death, the faint chemical tang now a mere whisper, yet it lingered in Poirot's mind as a clarion call to the truth. The charred fragment of the ledger page, with its damning notation C.B. trans, rested in Poirot's gloved hand, a silent accusation against Cedric Blackwood. The scratches on the lock, the residue in the ventilation grate, and the mysterious brass key found beneath the blotting paper, all pointed to a crime of calculated cunning, but the final piece of the puzzle remained elusive. Poirot, his green eyes gleaming with purpose, turned to Japp. "Inspector, we must confront Monsieur Blackwood with this fragment. His alibi crumbles, his motive grows clearer, but we need his confession to complete the picture. Arrange for him to meet us here, in this very room, where the truth cannot hide." Japp nodded, his face set with determination. "Right, Poirot. I'll have him brought in within the hour. But if he's our man, how do we explain that locked door? It's still a devil of a trick." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile betraying his confidence. "A trick, oui, but one that will unravel. The door, the gas, the missing page, they are all part of a performance, and Hercule Poirot will bring down the curtain." Hastings, ever the practical companion, shifted uneasily. "Blackwood's a slippery one, Poirot. He'll deny everything, won't he? That fragment's damning, but it's not the whole page. He could claim it's a mistake, or pin it on Thorn." Poirot's smile widened, though his eyes remained sharp. "Let him deny, mon ami. The liar weaves a web, but it is fragile against the truth. We shall see what Monsieur Blackwood's nerves reveal when faced with his own handwriting. An hour later, Cedric Blackwood arrived, his florid cheeks paler than before, his hands clutching his silver cigarette case as if it were a talisman. The office, lit by a single gas lamp, seemed to close in around him, the shelves of ledgers looming like silent judges. He sat heavily in the chair by Thorne's desk, his eyes darting between Poirot, Japp, and the ledger fragment now placed before him. "Monsieur Blackwood," Poirot began, his voice smooth but edged with steel. "You have told us you were at your club, the Athenaeum, all morning when Monsieur Thorne met his end. Yet the porter confirms you left for nearly half an hour, a fact you omitted. And now we have this." He held up the charred fragment, its ink stark against the blackened edges. "A piece of the missing ledger page, marked with your initials and a transfer of funds. Explain, s'il vous plaît." Blackwood's face drained of color, his fingers fumbling with the cigarette case. That's nonsense," he stammered, his voice cracking. "My initials? It could mean anything. Thorne handled the accounts, not me. He must have made an error, or forged it to cover his own mistakes." Poirot's eyebrows rose, his gaze unrelenting. "An error, monsieur? In a ledger kept by a man, renowned for his precision? None. This fragment tells a story of theft. Small sums, siphoned away, hidden as miscellaneous. The letters we found in Thorne's desk, his inquiries to the bank, they confirm he suspected you of embezzlement. He threatened to expose you, did he not?" Blackwood's hands trembled, and he lit a cigarette, the match flaring briefly in the dim room. "Expose me? Ridiculous. Thorne and I were partners, trusted each other. Those letters, he was just being overly cautious, always fussing over details." But his voice lacked conviction, and his eyes avoided the fragment on the desk. Japp, leaning forward, pressed harder. "Come off it, Blackwood. We've got a chemist who sold a chlorine-based gas canister to a man matching your description 2 days before Thorne died. You were seen leaving the club, plenty of time to get here and set it up. Why don't you make this easy and tell us the truth?" Blackwood's cigarette fell from his fingers, scattering ash on the floor. "Gas? You think I poisoned him? That's absurd. I was at the club, I told you. I stepped out for a smoke, that's all. I didn't come here." His voice rose, a note of desperation creeping in, and he gripped the arms of his chair as if to anchor himself. Poirot's voice was calm, almost soothing, but it carried an undeniable weight. "Monsieur Blackwood, you are a man of expensive tastes. Your club, your cigarettes, your tailored suits. Yet the firm struggles, does it not? The letters show withdrawals, undocumented, linked to you. Thorne discovered this, and you could not allow him to speak. So you devised a plan, a canister of gas, placed in the ventilation grate, releasing its poison while you sat safely at your club. Or so you thought. Blackwood's face crumpled, and he buried his head in his hands. "I didn't mean to kill him," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I only wanted the page to stop him from going to the bank. I got the gas from my brother's laboratory. He's a chemist, you see. I thought it would just make Thorne ill, give me time to take the page and destroy it. I didn't know it would kill him." Hastings, unable to contain himself, exclaimed, "Good Lord, man, you poisoned your own partner. And the locked door, how did you manage that?" Blackwood's shoulders shook, his voice barely audible. "I had a spare key. Thorne never knew. I came in through the service door at the back, placed the canister, and left, locking the office door behind me. I put the key back in the lock inside, using a bit of string through the keyhole to pull it into place. Then I went back to the club. It was supposed to look like a heart attack, not murder. Poirot nodded, his expression one of quiet triumph. A clever trick, monsieur, but not clever enough. The scratches on the lock, the residue in the grate, the fragment of the page, these betrayed you. And your conscience, it could not bear the weight of your crime. Jap, already reaching for his handcuffs, looked at Poirot with grudging admiration. "You've done it again, Poirot. That string trick, devilishly simple, but I'd never have thought of it. We'll have the canister analyzed to confirm the gas, but this confession seals it." Blackwood, now sobbing openly, offered no resistance as Jap led him away. Hastings watched, his face a mixture of shock and satisfaction. "It's monstrous, Poirot," he said as they stepped into the street. "All that for a few pounds? And poor Thorne killed for doing his job." Poirot adjusted his hat, his expression serene. "Greed, Hastings, is a poison as deadly as any gas. Monsieur Blackwood thought to hide his theft, but the truth, it always finds a way. The ledger's phantom page has spoken, and justice will follow." As they walked into the night, the fog seemed to lift, as if the city itself exhaled in relief. The motive was clear, the method unveiled, but Poirot's mind lingered on the details, the key, the grate, the fragment, ensuring no thread remained loose in the tapestry of this tragic crime. Chapter 9. The Client's Deception. The morning light filtered weakly through the curtains of Miss Clara Henshaw's Belgravia townhouse, casting a soft glow on the polished mahogany and heavy drapes of her drawing room. Hercule Poirot, seated in a high-backed chair, adjusted his pince-nez and regarded his hostess with a gaze that was both courteous and penetrating. Captain Hastings stood by the fireplace, his hands clasped behind his back, his honest face creased with curiosity. The air was warm, the fire crackling softly, but an undercurrent of tension ran through the room, as if the very walls anticipated the confrontation to come. Cedric Blackwood's confession had illuminated much, but Poirot, ever meticulous, sought to tie up every thread of the mystery surrounding Ernest Thorne's death. Miss Henshaw sat opposite, her burgundy dress as immaculate as ever, her gray eyes meeting Poirot's with a defiance tempered by unease. Her hands, ungloved today, rested calmly in her lap, but a slight tightening of her fingers betrayed her apprehension. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice crisp but not unkind, "I assume you have news of the investigation. Have you found the culprit behind poor Mr. Thorne's death?" Poirot inclined his head, his mustache curving slightly. "Indeed, mademoiselle, progress has been made. But there are inconsistencies in your account that we must address. Your second visit to the office, the one you failed to mention until pressed, why did you return, and what did you see?" Miss Henshaw's lips thinned, but she maintained her composure. "I explained this already. I returned at 11:30 to retrieve a receipt I had forgotten, one that might clarify the discrepancies in my accounts. When I arrived, the door was locked, and I waited for young Wells to open it. I found Mr. Thorne, dead, as I told you. I was shocked, naturally, and left soon after Hastings, unable to restrain himself, interjected. But, Miss Henshaw, you had time alone in that office before Wells arrived. You could have taken the missing ledger page, or even seen something you're not telling us. Why keep the visit secret at first?" Her eyes flashed, a spark of her temper surfacing. Secret? I omitted it because it seemed unimportant in the face of a man's death. I had no reason to hide it, Captain Hastings, and I resent the implication. I am a victim in this, not a criminal. My money was being stolen, likely by that scoundrel Blackwood. Poirot raised a hand, his voice soothing, yet firm. Calm yourself, mademoiselle. We do not accuse, we inquire. But let us be precise. You suspected Monsieur Blackwood of theft, oui? You confronted Monsieur Thorne about these discrepancies, and he, perhaps, hinted at his partner's guilt. This made you return, to press him further? Miss Henshaw nodded, her expression softening slightly. Yes, exactly. Thorne was cagey during our morning meeting, admitting there were issues but refusing to name Blackwood outright. I was furious. Those funds are my security, my legacy. I went back to demand the truth, but when I arrived, he was already gone. Her voice faltered, and for the first time, a trace of genuine sorrow crossed her face. Poirot's eyes narrowed, though his tone remained gentle. And the office, mademoiselle? Describe it to me. The ledger, was it open? The smell, the one like ammonia, was it strong? And did you touch anything before Wells arrived? She frowned, her brow creasing as she recalled the moment. The ledger was open, yes, on the desk, but I didn't look closely. I was too shaken by Thorne's body, his face. It was so still, so unnatural. The smell was there, sharp, like cleaning fluid, but I thought it was just the office's usual state. I touched nothing, Monsieur Poirot. I stood by the door, called for Wells, and waited. That's all. Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. And you saw no one else? No shadow in the fog, no sound of footsteps outside. She shook her head firmly. No one. The street was quiet, the fog thick. I was alone until Wells came. Hastings, scribbling in his notebook, glanced at Poirot. Her story fits with Wells' account, Poirot, but that doesn't mean she's telling the whole truth. She could have taken the page to protect herself, or even to use against Blackwood. Later, Miss Henshaw's head snapped up, her voice sharp. Protect myself? From what? I've lost money, Captain, not stolen it. If anyone had motive to silence Thorne, it was Blackwood. He's the one who's been pilfering my estate, and Thorne knew it. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. Your anger at Monsieur Blackwood is understandable, mademoiselle. And we have reason to believe he is indeed responsible for both the theft and the murder. But your second visit, it places you at the scene, and we must be certain of every detail. Tell me, did you notice the ventilation grate above the desk? Any sign of tampering, perhaps? Her eyes widened slightly, as if the question surprised her. The grate? No, I didn't look at it. I was focused on Thorne, on the shock of it all. Why would I notice such a thing? Poirot's smile was faint but knowing. Because, mademoiselle, the grate is where the poison entered. A gas, released slowly to kill without a trace. Your observation of the smell confirms it was present when you arrived, which helps us fix the time of the crime. Miss Henshaw's hand rose to her throat, her composure slipping. Poison? You mean someone deliberately killed him with gas? That's monstrous. Her voice trembled, but her eyes held Poirot's, searching for reassurance. Oui, mademoiselle, Poirot said softly. Monstrous, but true. And your testimony places Monsieur Blackwood's actions in sharper focus. He left his club, returned to the office, and set his plan in motion, all before you arrived. Hastings, catching the thread, added, That fits with the porter's story. Blackwood was gone from the Athenaeum for about half an hour, enough time to get to the office and back. Your visit, Miss Henshaw, narrows the window. Thorn must have been dead just before you got there." She nodded slowly, her anger giving way to a weary acceptance. "I want justice, Monsieur Poirot, for Thorn and for my losses. If Blackwood did this, I trust you'll see him pay." Poirot rose, bowing slightly. "Rest assured, mademoiselle, the truth is near." "We thank you for your candor. If you recall any further details, you will inform us, oui?" As they left the townhouse, Hastings turned to Poirot, his voice low. "She's believable, Poirot, but I still don't trust her completely. That second visit, she could have seen more than she's letting on." Poirot's eyes twinkled, though his expression remained serious. "Her deception, Hastings, was one of omission, not fabrication. She hid her second visit out of fear it would implicate her, but her anger at Blackwood is genuine. She is no murderer, but a woman wronged, seeking to reclaim what is hers." They stepped into the street where the morning air was crisp, the fog now a distant memory. Poirot's mind churned, fitting Miss Henshaw's testimony into the mosaic of the case. Her account clarified the timeline. Blackwood's absence from the club, the gas in the grate, the locked door, all pointed to his guilt. But Poirot, ever cautious, knew the importance of confirming every detail, lest a single thread unravel the entire tapestry. "What now, Poirot?" Hastings asked, adjusting his hat. "We've got Blackwood's confession, but do we need more to make it stick?" Poirot's smile was resolute. "We verify, mon ami. The canister, the key, the string trick, these must be confirmed, and young Wells, he may yet hold a final piece of the puzzle. Let us see what his fear conceals." As they walked toward Bloomsbury, the city seemed to hum with anticipation, as if sensing the climax of the mystery drawing near. Miss Henshaw's deception, though minor, had clarified the path, and Poirot was determined to follow it to its end. Chapter 10. The Clerk's Innocence. The late afternoon light cast long shadows across the Bloomsbury streets as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings approached the modest boarding house where Timothy Wells resided. The air was sharp with the bite of approaching winter, and the city's hum seemed subdued, as if holding its breath for the resolution of the mystery that had consumed Poirot's relentless mind. Cedric Blackwood's confession had illuminated the motive and method of Ernest Thorn's murder, yet Poirot, ever meticulous, sought to ensure no detail remained unexamined. Timothy Wells, with his trembling hands and frightened eyes, was the final piece of the puzzle, and Poirot intended to uncover what, if anything, the young clerk still concealed. Hastings, his coat collar turned up against the chill, glanced at Poirot. "Blackwood's as good as caught, Poirot, with that confession and the ledger fragment. Why bother with Wells again? The boy's scared stiff, but he doesn't strike me as a killer." Poirot's green eyes gleamed, his mustache twitching with a faint smile. "Fear, mon ami, is a mirror. It reflects truth, even when distorted. Young Wells overheard a damning argument between Blackwood and Thorn, yet his silence suggests more than mere loyalty. We must know what he holds back, for even the innocent may hide a key to the truth." The boarding house loomed ahead, its red brick facade as dour as before. The landlady, still suspicious, led them up the creaking stairs to Timothy's room, muttering about the boy's odd hours and endless books. "Always scribbling, that one," she said, her voice tinged with disapproval. "Chemicals and such. Not natural for a clerk." Poirot nodded politely, his mind already fixed on the task ahead. Timothy opened the door, his pale face drawn, his eyes redder than before, as if sleep had eluded him entirely. His room was unchanged, cluttered with chemical texts, the locked box now open on the table, its contents of lecture notes and equations exposed from their previous visit. He stood awkwardly, his hands twisting a frayed handkerchief, and gestured them inside with a nervous nod. "Monsieur Wells," Poirot began, his voice gentle but carrying that unmistakable authority. "We meet again, and I sense your fear has not lessened. You have been most helpful, telling us of the argument between Monsieur Blackwood and Monsieur Thorn. But there is more, is there not? Something you have not shared." Timothy's shoulders slumped, and he sank onto the edge of his bed, his voice barely audible. "I've told you everything, sir. I heard Mr. Blackwood and Mr. Thorn arguing about the ledger, about money missing. I didn't want to get involved. I need this job, or I'll be out on the street. I swear, I didn't do anything." Poirot's gaze softened, though his scrutiny remained sharp. "I believe you, jeune homme, when you say you did not kill. But fear is a heavy burden, and it clouds the mind. Let us be precise. When you returned to the office and found Monsieur Thorn dead, what did you see? Not just the body, but the room, the desk, the ledger, the air itself." Timothy swallowed hard, his eyes darting to the floor. "It was like I said, sir. The door was locked, and I used my key. Mr. Thorn was on the floor, his face awful, all twisted. The ledger was open on the desk, and there was that sharp smell, like something chemical. I thought it was cleaning fluid, but it made my eyes sting a bit. I didn't touch anything, just ran for help." Hastings, standing by the window, frowned. "You didn't notice the missing page, then? Or anything near the ventilation grate? You're sure no one else was in the office before you got there?" The boy shook his head vigorously. "No one, sir. The room was empty, except for Mr. Thorn. I didn't look at the ledger closely. I was too shaken. And the grate, I didn't even think to look up there." His voice trembled, and he clutched the handkerchief tighter, his knuckles white. Poirot stepped closer, his tone almost paternal. "And this argument you overheard, Monsieur Wells, it was a few days before the murder, oui? Did you hear anything else, perhaps later, that gave you pause? A word, a look between Blackwood and Thorn?" Timothy hesitated, his eyes flickering with indecision. Then, as if a dam broke, he spoke in a rush. "There was something else, sir, the day before Mr. Thorn died. I was leaving the office, locking up, and I saw Mr. Blackwood in the back alley, near the service door. He was carrying a small metal case, like one of those scientific kits. He didn't see me, but he looked furtive, like he didn't want to be noticed. I didn't think much of it then, but after what happened..." His voice trailed off, and he looked at Poirot with pleading eyes. "I should have said something, shouldn't I? But I was afraid he'd sack me, or worse." Poirot's expression was one of quiet triumph, though he masked it with a nod of encouragement. "You have done well to tell us now, Monsieur Wells. This metal case, it is significant. It may have held the canister that released the poison. And the service door, did you lock it that evening?" Timothy nodded, his face pale. "Yes, sir, always. It's my job to lock up at night, but there's a spare key for the service door. Mr. Blackwood keeps it in his office. I've seen it in his desk drawer." Hastings, catching the implication, exclaimed, "Good heavens, Poirot! That's how Blackwood got in. The service door, the spare key, he didn't need to tamper with the main lock at all." Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm but firm. Précisément, Hastings. The service door explains much. Monsieur Blackwood used it to enter, placed the canister, and left, locking the main door with his string trick to create the illusion of a sealed room. Your observation, Monsieur Wells, is the final thread we needed. Timothy's eyes filled with tears, relief mingling with fear. I didn't want to cause trouble, sir. I just wanted to keep my job, to study, to make something of myself. Mr. Thorne was good to me. He didn't deserve this. Poirot placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. You are innocent of this crime, jeune homme. Your silence was born of fear, not guilt. Go now. Rest, but speak to no one of this until we have concluded our work. As they left the boarding house, Hastings shook his head in wonder. That boy's been carrying that secret like a weight, Poirot. Blackwood in the alley with a metal case. It's practically a signed confession. We've got him dead to rights now. Poirot's smile was faint but resolute. Oui, Hastings, the case against Monsieur Blackwood is nearly complete. The service door, the spare key, the canister, all fit his confession. But we must confirm the canister's origin and ensure no other hand was involved. The truth, it is a delicate thing, and we must handle it with care. They stepped into the street, where the evening was settling in, the gas lamps flickering to life. Poirot's mind churned, weaving Timothy's testimony into the tapestry of the case. The clerk's innocence was clear, his fear a product of circumstance, but his words had sealed Blackwood's fate. The mystery of the locked room was unraveling, and Poirot was determined to present it whole, without a single thread astray. "What now, Poirot?" Hastings asked, his voice eager. "Do we bring Blackwood in for good, or is there more to uncover?" Poirot adjusted his hat, his expression serene. "We prepare for the final act, mon ami. Tomorrow we gather all, Blackwood, Henshaw, Wells, and lay bare the truth. The phantom ledger has spoken, and Hercule Poirot will ensure its voice is heard." As they walked into the night, the city's pulse seemed to quicken, as if sensing the resolution of the tragedy that had unfolded in the locked office. The clerk's fear had yielded its secret, and Poirot was ready to bring the curtain down. Chapter 11. The Denouement. The gas lamps of Chancery Lane flickered in the early evening gloom, casting a golden haze over the offices of Messrs. Thorne and Blackwood. Inside, the air was thick with anticipation, as if the very walls awaited the resolution of the tragedy that had unfolded within their confines. Hercule Poirot stood by the desk where Ernest Thorne had met his end, his gloved hands clasped behind his back, his green eyes gleaming with the quiet certainty of a man who had unraveled a knot of deceit. The ledger, its torn edge a silent witness, lay open before him, the charred fragment of the missing page resting beside it like a recovered relic. Captain Hastings stood near the door, his honest face alight with expectation, while Inspector Japp, notebook in hand, surveyed the room with a mix of admiration and impatience. Poirot had orchestrated this gathering with his usual flair for drama, summoning Cedric Blackwood, Miss Clara Henshaw, and Timothy Wells to the scene of the crime. The three suspects, each a thread in the tapestry of murder, sat in chairs arranged in a semicircle, their expressions a study in contrast. Blackwood's florid cheeks pale with dread, Miss Henshaw's gray eyes sharp with defiance, and Timothy's trembling hands betraying his lingering fear. The room, lit by a single gas lamp, seemed to close in around them, the shelves of ledgers looming like silent judges in the flickering light. Monsieur, Mademoiselle, Poirot began, his voice smooth but commanding. We are gathered here to lay bare the truth of Monsieur Ernest Thorn's death. A man of precision, struck down in this locked room, a page of his ledger stolen to hide a secret. But the truth, it cannot be silenced. Not when Hercule Poirot applies the little gray cells Blackwood shifted uneasily, his cigarette case untouched in his pocket, his eyes avoiding the ledger fragment. Miss Henshaw sat erect, her hands folded, her gaze fixed on Poirot, as if daring him to accuse her. Timothy, pale and wide-eyed, clutched his handkerchief, his breath shallow. Poirot paced slowly, his cane tapping the floor. Let us begin with the crime. Monsieur Thorn was poisoned, not by a blow or a bullet, but by a gas. Chlorine-based, released through the ventilation grate above this desk. He pointed to the brass grate, its tarnished surface now a key to the mystery. The door was locked, the window latched, creating the illusion of an impenetrable fortress. Yet a murderer entered, killed, and left, all while maintaining this deception. Hastings, unable to contain himself, interjected, "It's a devilish trick, Poirot. How could anyone pull it off without being seen?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing beneath it. "Patience, Hastings. Let us reconstruct the events. Monsieur Blackwood, you were at your club, the Athenaeum, or so you claimed. But the porter revealed you left for nearly half an hour, time enough to return here. You purchased a canister of gas from a chemist, did you not? A canister small enough to fit in that grate, releasing its poison slowly while you sat, seemingly innocent, miles away." Blackwood's face crumpled, his voice a hoarse whisper. "I've told you, I didn't mean to kill him. I only wanted the page, to stop him from going to the bank. It was an accident." Miss Henshaw's eyes flashed, her voice cutting through the room. "An accident? You stole from my estate, Blackwood, and killed a good man to cover it. I knew you were a thief, but a murderer?" Her hands clenched, her temper barely restrained. Poirot raised a hand, silencing her. "Mademoiselle, your anger is justified, but let us proceed with order. The ledger fragment, marked CB Trans, confirms Monsieur Blackwood's embezzlement. Letters hidden in Monsieur Thorn's desk show he suspected as much, and threatened to expose you, monsieur. You could not allow this, so you devised a plan." He turned to Timothy, whose eyes widened in alarm. "Monsieur Wells, you saw Monsieur Blackwood in the alley, carrying a metal case, the day before the murder. You heard their argument days earlier about money missing from the ledger. Your fear kept you silent, but your testimony has been vital." Timothy nodded, his voice trembling. "I didn't want trouble, sir, but I swear I had no part in it." Poirot's gaze softened. "I believe you, jeune homme. You are innocent, a witness caught in a storm not of your making." He turned back to Blackwood, his voice now steel. "You used the spare key to the service door, kept in your office to enter unseen. You placed the canister in the grate, set to release its gas slowly. You left, locking the main door with a string through the keyhole, pulling the key into place to create the locked room illusion. The scratches on the lock betray your haste, and the residue in the grate confirms the method." Japp, nodding, added, "We've got the chemist's statement, and the lab confirmed the gas matches the canister's type." "Your brother's laboratory. Blackwood, that's where you got it, isn't it?" Blackwood's shoulders sagged, his confession spilling out in a broken rush. Yes, it was my brother's. I thought it would just make Thorn ill, give me time to take the page. I burned it in the fireplace, but I didn't know the gas would kill him. I swear it. Miss Henshaw's face softened, tears welling in her eyes. Poor Mr. Thorne. He was trying to protect my interests, and you killed him for it. Timothy, his voice barely audible, whispered, "He was kind to me. He didn't deserve this." Poirot's expression was grave but satisfied. "The phantom ledger has spoken, monsieur. Your greed led to theft, your fear to murder. The little gray cells have seen through your illusion, and justice will now take its course." Japp stepped forward, handcuffs in hand. "Cedric Blackwood, you're under arrest for the murder of Ernest Thorne." Blackwood offered no resistance. His head bowed as Japp led him away, the clink of the handcuffs echoing in the silent room. Miss Henshaw rose, her composure restored, but her eyes still glistening. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. I can mourn Mr. Thorne now, and perhaps recover what was stolen." Timothy, trembling but relieved, managed a nod. "I'm sorry I didn't speak sooner, sir." "Thank you for believing me." Poirot bowed slightly to both. "Go in peace, mademoiselle, monsieur. The truth has freed you." As they left, Hastings turned to Poirot, his voice filled with awe. "You've done it again, Poirot. That string trick, the service door, it was so simple, yet so clever. How did you see it?" Poirot's smile was serene. "The little gray cells, Hastings. They see what others overlook, the scratches, the residue, the fear in a boy's eyes. Order and method, they never fail." The room fell silent, the ledger closed, its secrets laid bare. The mystery of the locked room was solved, and the phantom ledger's voice had been heard at last. Chapter 12. The Order Restored. The London night wrapped Chancery Lane in a velvet embrace, the fog a distant memory as stars pricked the sky above. Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings walked slowly from the offices of Messrs. Thorne and Blackwood, their footsteps echoing on the cobblestones. The mystery of Ernest Thorne's death had been laid bare, the threads of motive, method, and deception woven into a tapestry of truth by Poirot's relentless little gray cells. Cedric Blackwood was in custody, his confession sealing his fate as the murderer who had poisoned his partner to conceal his embezzlement. The ledger's missing page, its charred fragment a silent witness, had spoken at last, and justice was poised to take its course. Hastings, his hands thrust deep into his coat pockets, glanced at Poirot, whose serene demeanor belied the intensity of the case they had just resolved. "It's a grim business, Poirot," he said, his voice tinged with both admiration and melancholy. "Blackwood, a man of means, brought low by greed, and poor Thorne, killed for doing his duty. How do you always see through it all? The locked room, the gas, the lies." Poirot's green eyes twinkled in the lamplight, his mustache curving into a satisfied smile. "The little gray cells, mon ami, they are never deceived by illusions. The locked room was but a stage, the gas a prop, the missing page a script written in fear. Each clue, the scratches on the lock, the residue in the grate, the boy's trembling hands, told its story. Hercule Poirot listens, and the truth emerges." They paused at a corner, the city's pulse a soft hum around them. Hastings shook his head, marveling. "That string trick with the key, devilishly clever, yet so simple. And the service door, the spare key in Blackwood's desk. You saw it all from the start, didn't you?" Poirot's smile widened, though he waved a gloved hand dismissively. "Not from the start, Hastings. The truth reveals itself in layers, like an onion. The chemical odor pointed to poison, the ledger fragment to motive, the boy's fear to a witness. Each layer peeled away the lie, until only the truth remained." Hastings chuckled, his spirits lifting. And Miss Henshaw. She'll get her money back, I hope. Poor woman, caught up in Blackwood's schemes. And young Wells, free to pursue his chemistry without fear of suspicion. Poirot nodded, his expression softening. Oui, Mademoiselle Henshaw will recover what was stolen, and Monsieur Wells will find his path. The innocent are freed, the guilty bound. This is the order, Hastings, that we restore when chaos threatens. They resumed their walk, heading toward Poirot's flat in Whitehaven Mansions, where a warm fire and a cup of tisane awaited. The city seemed quieter now, as if relieved of the burden of Thorne's unsolved murder. Poirot's mind, however, lingered on the details, ensuring no thread remained loose. The canister, he mused aloud. It will be found, I think, in Blackwood's brother's laboratory, confirming his confession. And the key, the one we found, it was the service door's spare, hidden by Blackwood to maintain his illusion. Hastings, ever curious, pressed further. But how did you know, Poirot? The moment you saw the grate, the scratches, the fragment, how did you piece it together so quickly? Poirot stopped, turning to face his friend, his eyes bright with the joy of explanation. It is the method, Hastings. The mind must be orderly, like a garden, each clue a plant tended with care. The chemical odor suggested gas, the grate its delivery. The ledger fragment pointed to theft, the scratches to a trick. Young Wells' fear was not guilt, but knowledge, and Mademoiselle Henshaw's temper was righteous, not murderous. Each piece fits when one observes with precision. Hastings laughed, shaking his head. You make it sound so simple, but I'd have been lost without you. What now, then? Arrest, I hope. Poirot's smile was mischievous. Arrest, oui, but first, a tisane to celebrate the triumph of order over chaos. And perhaps, mon ami, a new case will find us soon, for the world is never short of mysteries. They reached Whitehaven Mansions, the porter tipping his hat as they entered. Inside, Poirot's flat was a haven of symmetry, its polished surfaces and neatly arranged furnishings a reflection of his mind. As he prepared the tisane, the aroma of chamomile filling the air, Hastings sank into an armchair, his thoughts still on the locked room and the phantom ledger. It's a strange thing, Poirot, he said, accepting a steaming cup. A single page, a few pounds stolen, and it led to all this. Makes you wonder what other secrets are hidden in ledgers across London. Poirot sipped his tisane, his expression one of serene contentment. Secrets, Hastings, are like shadows. They exist only until the light of truth shines upon them. And Hercule Poirot is that light. The fire crackled, the night deepened, and the case of the phantom ledger closed, its mysteries resolved, its order restored. Poirot leaned back, his cup cradled in his hands, and for a moment the world was as precise and harmonious as his own meticulous mind.